It's the Sports Peninsula podcast coming up. We continue our NFL draft prospect coverage leading up to the April 25th first round start here in Detroit, Michigan. In this episode, we'll look at the defensive ends and edge rushers. This is one of the glamorous positions on the defensive side of the ball, and the 2024 class has a lot of day one potential. We'll look at who we see as their top prospects and who might fit into Detroit Lions plans as well next. Now here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Druzinski, Drew, and I'm joined by Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners, and we're talking NFL draft prospect previews. And today, we're talking about the edge rushers and edge defenders, defensive ends. Coach, this is the glamour, one of the glamour spots on the defensive side of the football. How are you liking this group?
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a highly coveted position, like you said. It's a highly recognized position. The edge defender, the athlete of the front, coming after the passer, being a menace on the run. We have a great one in Aiden Hutchinson here that we drafted very early in the draft a couple of years ago, who's gotten out to a really, really good start with his career. It's a position group that I think we are, with the Lions, are definitely potential investors in. We are having some maneuvering taking place with our edge defenders via free agency, via retirement. We have made one nice addition with Marcus Davenport, and he is definitely going to be able to aid and bring a little pressure to the quarterback. James Houston, we're going to have back this coming up year. He was a proven menace as a pass rusher. But we certainly could add some really kind of breadth, I think, to the position group is what I would like to term it as, Drew. A guy that can be more of a mainstay player, somebody that's going to be very, very strong against the run because we want to make teams one-dimensional, and is going to be able to provide the capability to have a speed-to-power pass rush and put constant quarterback pressures together, which will then also, convey to hopefully higher sack totals and plays behind the line of scrimmage as well. But this is definitely a position group that we need to look at as something that the Lions could hit home on.
Yeah, and when you talk about, you bring up Hutch, and 2 years ago in that draft, there were 3 defensive ends taken in the top 5. You had Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson, and that number 5, they were the top 2. And that number 5 was Kayvon Thibodeau, who was looked at as the number 1 for a long time of that group. But again, now what was unique about that draft was 2 years ago, and if we remember, Brock Purdy's the class of that draft class for the quarterbacks.
Yeah, Mr. Irrelevant.
And yeah, Mr. Irrelevant. And you can name a few, but I wouldn't say they're even near touching Brock Purdy's class. I mean, Pickett went 20. We called that one. We thought Malik Willis might go, but he didn't. And obviously there's reasons for that. Desmond Ridder, guys like that. We saw that, and that happened to be a year where there were a good amount of defensive ends and edge rushers that were highly, highly thought of. And ironically, a year where the quarterback was pretty devoid of a lot of first-round talent. Not the case this year. So there's a lot of day one talent in this group, but what the point I'm trying to make is we may not see as many go in the top 10 as we would have, but because the quarterbacks are such a premium position and there's a good handful of them that are going to be available, it's going to push some of these guys back. But Coach, we have a good group here to look at of our top 20. I'd really love you to walk it down for us because it's a good group.
Yep, here is the SPP edge rusher top 20, starting from the lower right, snaking itself back up to the upper left. Brennan Jackson from Washington State takes us at number 20. Grayson Murphy from UCLA. Now, you look at there, did you make a mistake here, Coach, when you put together this presentation? No, his identical twin brother is going to be a guy we talk about here a little bit further down the pack here. Super talented player in Cedric Johnson out of Ole Miss. Great athlete at 18. Justin Aboigbe from Alabama is kind of a defensive tackle, edge hybrid. Real impressive player there. Austin Booker from Kansas takes us through number 16. He's a guy that can rush the passer and plays a pretty good all-around game. Nolan Sacer from Houston. He is a guy that produced big numbers for the Cougars. That's an interesting player at number 15. A guy that has been connected to the Lions, I know they like him, is Mohamed Kamara out of Colorado State. It's kind of hard to see. There are some people that project this guy as a day 2 football player. There's some that say that he's going to be one of those diamonds in the rough that comes out of day 3. Javon Solomon out of Troy is a guy they're going to be talking about here in a few. Another player that we've talked about in the past here at number 12 is Brandon Dorlus of Oregon. Yes, he makes the edge rush top 20. We talked about him as a defensive tackle. He plays both positions and can play along the front with a lot of scheme and position and versatility. Over at number 11, Marshawn Nealon out of Western Michigan, the guy, one of our fellow Broncos here, Drew, we're going to be talking about in a little bit more depth here. He's number 11. Into our top 10, the other Murphy twin from the UCLA Bruins, Gabriel Murphy, sits at number 10. They both play with a very similar kind of repertoire. We'll talk about the Gabriel here a little bit. Jonah Ellis out of Utah from the Utes. If that name looks familiar to any of you Lions fans out there, listen to this in the Sports Peninsula. That is the son of former Detroit Lion defensive lineman Luther Ellis. He wears the same number he did in college and everything, but that's Jonah Ellis. He's number 9 on our big board. Darius Robinson out of Canton High School and the University of Missouri. He is at number 8 in our top 10. This is another guy that was also on our defensive line top 20, and a guy that we're going to be talking about here shortly. Adisa Isaac out of Penn State, one of 2 defensive ends that are very impressive out of the Nittany Lion program. And at number 11 is Braylon Trice, another guy that has been featured and connected to the Detroit Lions at the end of that first round. When we talk about speed to power rush, we're going to talk about Braylon Trice in a little bit here, Drew. Into our top 5, one of 2 Crimson Tide edge players, Chris Braswell, outside linebacker, defensive end type player. He's at number 5. Chop Robinson out of Penn State. Now, this is a guy that there was a feature written about him yesterday as the Lions being very, very high on. This is a very torqued up edge pass rusher. It really pins his ears back. Jared Verse out of Florida State in at number 3. He is an impressive guy that we'll be talking about as well. Leatu Latu from UCLA, one of 3 UCLA Bruin edge players that are in the top 20 of our big board here, Drew. Real unique guy that's really cemented himself into the upper class of the edge rushers in at number 2. And the guy that we feature first out of the University of Alabama, one of those 2 great Alabama edge rushers in this draft, is Dallas Turner from the University of Alabama, our number 1 player on the edge rusher big board for the SPP 2024 NFL draft analysis.
That's awesome, Coach. That's a great group there. Hey, before we jump into the actual rundown of each of these guys here, let's talk about the Lions again, because you brought up they brought in Davenport, and really like him. He was a 14th overall pick by the Saints. That was our first draft, Coach, that we did. I remember him well because from out of UTSA, and he's a very good player. Do you think now? Obviously, they're hoping that the presence of Reeder and McNeil and Hutchinson on that line is going to create some opportunities for him. Do you think that'll be enough, or are you really looking for the Lions to very much help this position group out in this draft?
Oh, we have multiple spots. I mean, Charles Harris isn't back. We've lost, Romeo Quaro's not back. Okay, we've added Davenport as one of those players. There's no doubt that we could look to solidify, because really with the defensive alignment, Marcus Davenport is a 1-year player. We're looking at guys that come in and out anyway. They're not out there every single down the entire, the time the defense is out there. That we don't really see that anymore. There is a player that we could certainly draft at 29 and definitely within day 2's, reach, that could cement themselves as one of those rotational pieces next year and ultimately become, a would-be starter type player. There's no 2 doubts about that. They need to be able to do it. This is a position group that the Lions are going to be doing some hunting on in the first 2 days of the draft. One of those first 4 picks is going to be an edge defender. I'm very confident about that.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think if the Lions do feel that that's a priority for them to address, then that's exactly what they're going to have to do in either day one or day two. I you again, we'll talk about some dark horse guys, and just some guys that maybe, like you said, day three gems, but when at the end of the day, that's more of a risk. So if the Lions view this beefing up the defensive end edge rush position as a priority, they're going to have to do it on day one or two, because then you're starting to roll the dice a little bit. Not Brad Holmes' MO, though. We know that. So definitely looking forward to seeing what they do. But let's jump into it, Coach. Let's talk about Dallas Turner out of Alabama.
Well, like we had said, our number one edge rushing prospect this year is Dallas Turner out of Alabama. He's more of an outside linebacker edge type. They're more of a 3-4 principal defense in Alabama. 6'4", 252-pound junior. He's out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 4'4", 640 coming off of that edge. So you have a torqued up human being and a guy that can leap 40.5 inches in the air. So this is a tremendous athlete with amazing burst and explosiveness. 5-star recruit. He was an All-American and All-SEC player at Alabama, along with being a freshman All-American. 120 career tackles. So he definitely made his fair share of plays through his 3 years of playing over there. 33.5 career tackles for loss. So he has been an absolute menace in the backfield at the SEC level. So this is a high caliber guy when it talks about making explosive plays in the backfield. 23.5 career sacks, and over 100 career quarterback pressures. Safe to say, Drew, if the Lions were in an area where they could get to Dallas Turner, I think he would be a phenomenal fit here. We will not be seeing that, as Dallas Turner is likely to go in the top 15 picks conservatively. I think that's probably fair to say. This is an outstanding athlete, Drew, that possesses great upside as somebody. Think Josh Allen. Think that there's your guy right there for Jacksonville.
Yeah,
this is a very, very similar football player.
Yeah, I'm excited about Dallas Turner, no doubt. What else do you like about him, Coach?
Well, as we alluded to, he's just a phenomenal athlete, and if he can get his first 10 yards upfield or his first 10 yards out of his stance in 1.54 seconds. So, I mean, that is amazing quickness. You have to have some amazing range to be able to block that, or else he's just going to arc past you. He also, he's a speed to power, power to speed classic pass rusher. He has that capability. And we talk about speed to power, that's starting out of that stance, getting that great burst, that 1.54 and 10 yards burst, and then going along with that as much as you can. And then once the offensive tackle sets, that you're able to press into him and reduce into the quarterback, thus either creating a quarterback pressure, a quarterback hit, a quarterback hurry, or a quarterback sack. So he is able to do this with just great frequency. He's got a highly developed pass rush repertoire. He's a pro-level pass rusher day one. And he can shift from the speed to power element really, really well. He for being a guy that probably is still growing into being able to play with that technique from a strength standpoint, he does it extremely well, because it's not the most easy. A lot of guys will lock it and engage real quick, and that's now they're basically in a sense blocked. It's you really don't want to spend a whole lot of time pressing into that offensive tackle. It's not the easiest technique to be able to teach, but if you're able to do it, and a lot of it's with your natural ability, that says a lot. And Dallas Turner can use that technique pretty well, which speaks to his ability to create quarterback pressures, and that likely is to translate to some degree. He's got unmatched twitch in that first step explosion. Like I said, 1.54 in his 10-yard split. He's very slippery, when it comes to beating blocks. He's not maybe your most traditional block destructor from a standpoint of punching with his hands and reducing, but he's able to slide off and replace. Really, really impressive. He's long-armed and knows how to lever. He's very, very good on the perimeter as a run defender and being able to keep the edge set. He's an adequate edge setter from the power standpoint. He's alignment versatile. He's very flexible. He's able to be a factor in space and in coverage, so you can drop him and do some different things. He's the cream of the crop in regards to what he brings to the table and his phenomenal athletic ability, Drew.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about being slippery, I mean, he gets great dip on when he makes his approach. He's got good techniques with like ripping and swim technique. He's able to and he's able to do a lot of things like you said, where he doesn't have to be to engage directly with the guy with the tackle in front of him, because I mean, realistically, like you said earlier, that's not what you necessarily want to do, because you're talking about a guy who's probably 70, 80 pounds heavier than you. But this guy is amazing. I tell you what, I won't be surprised if he's not a top 10 pick. There's no way he's not a top 15 pick. But to me, the only reason we're even talking in between 10 and 15 is because there's going to be a huge push for quarterbacks, likely 4, and there's at least there's at least 3 receivers that'll be taking up the top 10 right away. So that just pushes the field down. But it's not a knock on Dallas Turner or any of these guys. But Coach, there's a few things you'd like to see him work on, maybe, or a few concerns. Let's talk about those.
Well, this is in the SEC championship game from a year ago, and you can see a little bit. He's not the thickest guy. He's very, very tight. He's very, very lean, and that's kind of the coin of the realm anyway today in today's game. You're seeing this. We're asking these guys to drop and cover a little bit too. So I mean, these guys aren't the most massy football players. Maybe like the edge rushers of our youth when you're talking about the Bruce Smiths and those kinds of Neil Smiths, those kinds of guys. Mm-hmm. He's got some mass and some strength to gain. Those are some things that he's going to have to be able to do, because the NFL level is just going to be a little stronger than what he probably worked against for the most part in his college days. He struggles to hold his ground against dominant run blockers, and I saw some evidence of that. I looked at it. I mean, most of his clips are just him just beating around an offensive tackle's edge, it just flying past them. But when he's picked up, he can get blocked, and those are some things he's going to have to become a better block destructor, not just kind of slide off of it using his natural athletic ability. He's got to, like I said, those hands, and that's going to really come into the development of the use of his hands. Big piece of emphasis there to work on. And he can be a little bit of hit and miss in the speed rush phase. When we say that, not that he misses and gets picked up and blocked all that much, but he can just kind of almost take himself out of a play because he'll burst so far upfield that he's not able to control it. Thus, he gets way outside and frames the quarterback, so to speak, and really creates a pocket for himself, which is something that you've got to be able to bend an arc once you get upfield those first couple of steps. Sometimes he mistimes it. He does it so fast that he just kind of carries himself out of the play. But those are things that Dallas Turner will work on and refine. With great work ethic, this guy becomes, really, really good, probably ceiling Pro Bowl caliber edge defender.
Yeah, I mean, and when you talk about possibly, like, in essence, over pursuing or getting too far upfield, that Aiden Hutchinson struggles with that at times still. Yep. He's getting better with it, and he's a great player. But again, as you can see, even Aiden Hutchinson does that. It's going to happen. But at the end of the day, when you have the athletic ability to do that, you'll hit home. You'll find home real quick. Dallas Turner is a very, very good football player. Really excited to see where he lands. Hopefully not in the NFC North. We'll put it that way. I don't really want to see him. So he's a very good football player. Our number 2 prospect, Coach, let's talk about him.
Yes, our number 2 guy is Laiatu Latu out of the University of California at Los Angeles, acronym UCLA. So everyone knows that. Now they are more of a 4-3 scheme team. So he's more of an edge defensive end type, and you can see it in that frame. 6'5", 265-pound senior. He's worked himself in, and we've really seen this. It's not just our board. We had him at number 2 even before we did any film study. He was at number 2 after our adjusted rankings after the combine, and he really holds there. From Sacramento, California, 4'6", 40. So this is another guy that runs really, really well. Not quite what Dallas Turner brings to the table, but he runs really well. Now, this is a transfer from Washington. He started out at the University of Washington, and he actually was set to medically retire from the University of Washington. He sustained a very, very concerning neck injury when he played for the Huskies. And he missed 2 full years of football. It looked as if it was all over. He got a second opinion, transferred to UCLA, and became the 2023 Lombardi Award winner, which goes to the top defensive player in college football.
Wow.
The 2023 Ted Hendricks Award winner that goes to the top defensive end in all of college football. So it's amazing what can happen, when one, takes a certain path versus another. So yes, he was the All-American this past year. You're doggone right, he was All-American, and he parlayed, his return to football at UCLA with 2 All Pac-12 seasons. He's got 35 plus career tackles for loss. He has 25 and a half career sacks. So those numbers are even more impressive than Turner's. He has 86 career quarterback hurries. Quarterback pressures. That's a misprint. It's total pressures, not just hurries. Pressures is total. So another guy that's been extremely impactful as a pass rusher in his college football career. 5 career pass deflections, 5 career forced fumbles. So he's missed 2 years. He's a senior. So what was it, 6 years for him? Yes, it was. He played 6 years because of the COVID year. He missed 2 full years of football. So you take that really down to 4 years, and one of those years would be kind of considered a redshirt year in his true freshman season at Washington. It really was 3 campaigns that he played through. So statistically, is he in the ballpark of Dallas Turner when it comes to some of the juicier pass rush in the backfield stats? Oh, you're doggone right he is. He's actually surpassed him. He actually has even maybe a little more productivity in certain areas. Latu is a very intriguing prospect, Drew.
He is. And I'll be honest, my only concern, and I'll talk about that after we go through the positives and strengths and weaknesses here, but I really love his game. And yeah, you would be having that injury and missing that time. The fact that he was able to come back and just absolutely be prolific last year, that speaks volumes about what his work ethic is, his commitment level is. That if that doesn't prove it, I don't know what will. But when you can play through injury and then play at an elite level, you're a committed athlete. So that's a very big positive for Latu. But talk about what else you like, Coach.
Well, he certainly can, like you said, Drew. You said it very, very well. He certainly can play this game. He plays it very, very well. He's got the best usage of hands of any edge defender in this draft. Chris Jenkins probably does from an interior defensive line standpoint, but Latu probably does from an edge defender standpoint. He's very diverse and complex in his pass rush repertoire. He's got a lot to that game. He's alignment versatile. You can move him all across the front. Primarily have him out of a 2-point stance, but he can get down into a 3 and do some things too. He's a very strong, long frame, 6'5", 265. So he's a willing edge setter. And into the run phase as well. He's got good, very, very functional athlete. All that he brings to the table, he uses in his repertoire. Very instinctive, high, relentless motor, real hot running, hot rod type motor. He's very active mover, very difficult to block. Really can sink his hips and get his shoulders lower underneath a blocker with tremendous instinctive will and quickness. Very instinctive player. He's just a real playmaker. For him to miss the amount of football that he had and have 35 and a half career tackles for loss or over 35 career tackles for loss and 25 and a half sacks, it really speaks to the type of athlete and ability as a playmaker that he has, Drew.
Obviously, the injury history is a concern, going right into this, and you've been mentioning that. But what else could he work on, or what else is maybe a concern about his game for Latu?
Well, I mean, you alluded to it when we were starting to talk about some of his finer points, and it's a deal breaker for me. Latu is kind of a deal breaker for me, and yes, there could be potential for him to be back at 29 because of that neck injury. Now his medicals, his medical evaluations and his physical examinations that will be taking place, and teams will be bringing him in. They're going to really look at some of those things and kind of quantify what the UCLA medical team, had thought in regards to Latu and his ability to play the game. The University of Washington told him to retire. So is it a critical injury that he sustained? He 100% did. And to me, I'm cool on Latu because of that. For all that he brings to the table, right here, you can see one of his 5 forced fumbles right there, against San Diego State there. Or that is San Diego State. That's not Utah. He's an amazing playmaker. Amazing playmaker. But that neck injury is just a bull in a china shop. I mean, it's just too concerning. He's a very good athlete, but like I said, he's not quite the athlete like a Dallas Turner. And we'll talk about some other guys down the road here that probably have a little bit more torque and athletic ability than even what Latu possesses. He needs to get more massy and body strength. Yeah, he's 6'5", 265, but it's real lean. He probably needs to be more of a 280 type guy to truly be able to affect as a 4-3 defensive end edge rusher type. He can get hung up on blocks in the run game and get taken for rides every once in a while, just like Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner has shown that to be an issue as well. Doesn't appear to be quite as adept in the run game as he does in the pass game. He plays a little higher when he reads run and those kinds of things. He really is able to trigger on his pass cues probably a little better than he does in the run at this phase in his career. And those are things that will get better over time. They will. Plays with average length and outside leverage for a guy that's in a position that is asked to do it. He really at times is pretty average on the pin when it comes to being an outside lever, and a guy that's able to steer across and keep things in front or squeeze things down and keep them inside, whichever which way you're talking about it. He is a little more towards the average level in some of those phases. But when it comes to rushing the passer, I mean, this is a highly, highly productive and talented player.
Yeah, and I share your concerns about the injury. Not that, again, can he play at a high level right now? Yeah, absolutely. He's been doing that. He's been doing that. The question is, how fragile is the injured area? How fragile is the neck? I mean, are we talking about, and that's where we just got to trust the medical teams, and to me, and we talked about this last year, different circumstances. We talked about Jalen Carter. We loved his ability. We had concerns. Well, if Brad Holmes decided it wasn't a fit, then it wasn't a fit. And that's what he decided ultimately. So it's going to come down to this with Latu as well. The medicals are going to dictate it. And honestly, if he falls to 29, he's likely falling out of the first round, because I can't imagine. I mean, stranger things have happened, but of course, I mean, I can't imagine that the Lions at that point would say, yeah, this is our guy. We're so happy because no one else knew what we knew. I don't know about that. Now with medicals, that's kind of tough. You can roll the dice and take a chance. That's a big chance to take. So you better be real sure about the medicals. Now, I mean, a different sport going back though. I mean, I can remember when the Tigers in 2004, you were in the Tiger hat. I got to talk a little bit about him. They signed a guy named Pudge Rodriguez. All kinds of concerns about that back. Well, they had a real good back doctor check him out, and he said, no, he's good to go. And he was good to go. So it's very possible. Baseball and football, totally different sports. I get it, but the same premise.
The most physically demanding position in baseball is catcher. That position will beat you up.
So it's just a matter of.
It's a great analogy comparison, actually.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's just a matter of, can this individual athlete's body hold up under these circumstances? And it really is that simple, and yet not. I mean, the neck and the back are real sensitive areas, and it's. I don't know, but I think overall,
there may be some teams that are willing to use a first round pick on just a designated pass rusher. You know, they in their organization right now, that's what they really need, and they can afford to draft a guy in the first round to do so. Then he's going in the first round. I think that's what he really is. You know, if you're going to try to preserve and protect him a little bit, you know, I am ultimately concerned about that neck. You know, enduring as a 3 down. I just see it being a fast career. Because you know that is critical to be able to play in the most physical elements of the game in the run game. You want to trust that neck in there. That scares me a little bit.
Especially when you got your hand in the dirt. You're going to make head contact every single snap with the guy in front of you at least once, and it could really push you back, man. It is a big concern, but overall, talent-wise, what he brings to the table, great football player, and I do agree in the line with the number 2 ranking, no question. It's just that injury is a big question mark. So we shall see. Wishing him success, no question. Love to see him in Detroit if the neck's good. That would be fantastic. That would be
his skills. His skills as a pass rusher and the usage of his hands and his pass rush repertoire are second to none.
Yeah,
they're the best in the draft. That's why he sits at number 2.
Let's talk about the guy sitting at number 3, Coach, from Florida State.
Let's do that. Our number 3 edge prospect on the SPP big board is Jared Verse, another 4'3" defensive end edge, this time out of Florida State, 6'4", 260-pound junior, out of Dayton, Ohio. So he's a Midwest guy at heart. 4'5", 840, so he runs very, very well for a big, thick defensive end. 31 reps on the 225 bench. So this is a guy that is very, very strong, committed to the weight room. He's a transfer from FCS Albany University of Albany. He was a Colonial Athletic Association Defensive Rookie of the Year and all CAA FCS All-American at Albany. So he was highly productive, very successful player at the FCS level before his 2 years he spent at Florida State, which all he was there was 2-time All-ACC and All-American. So I guess he was able to make the transition from FCS to Power 5 FBS pretty well there, Drew.
It's pretty good.
When you add some totals to his career, when you take his Albany and his stats from the Seminoles together, 144 career tackles, 42 and a half career tackles for loss. So he was absolutely constantly in the backfield making plays. 26 and a half career sacks, 30 career quarterback hits, and 77 career total pressures. This has been a guy that has been an absolute thorn in the side as a pass rusher and as a playmaker in the backfield. Another guy that has been connected to the Detroit Lions. And this is the type of player that I think, Drew, they would be looking for. This type of defensive end. A guy that can add the element to the pass rush opposite Aiden Hutchinson, yet is very good at press and play, edge setting, run defending edge setter as well. This is the type of guy they're going to be looking at. And this is a guy that I don't think is going to be there. I think he's going earlier, but this is the type of guy they're going to be looking at right here, Drew.
Yep. Agree with you 100%, Coach. Really would love it if he slid down to 29. Really would love it. I find it very difficult to believe that'll happen. Just too much to like here. Let's talk about more of what you do like about Jared Verse.
Well, and we got a little breaking news. Not the best breaking news either. We're looking for a tight end too. Brock Wright just signed with the 49ers.
Yeah, that was going to be expensive offer sheet to match. So from what I understood, it was 3 years, $12 million. That's a lot.
So, well, you know, that we covered tight ends. If you want to look at some tight ends and some guys that we will do a little in-show plug here, Drew, that we could be using maybe, because now that's a position that we could be talking about in the first 2 days. Take a look at our tight ends preview here, right here. You know, just click and subscribe and, you know, all those good things, and you'll have access to it. But getting back to our guy here, Jared Verse, yeah, Drew, he's a workout warrior. He'd be a culture fit here in Detroit. He would be really, really, you know, he would fit right in. He's a balanced 3-down defensive end type. You're getting a lot of value here. That's why I think he's going up higher, probably in the top 15 of this draft. He's got explosive bursts. He's absolutely devastating out of his stance. He's another guy that's a real quick split in those first 10 yards. Very skilled in the use of his hands. He's got good hand placement. He's a true speed to power player. He really plays that technique well. And that's exactly what we're looking for, is a guy that does that as well. Because it's a guy that can keep the quarterback inside, yet is going to be physical run defender, all in the same. He's very, very effective in that speed to power translation. He's got a white hot running motor. He plays just on fire, which obviously you want all of your players to play that way on defense, but but able to think at the same time and be able to be responsive. This guy is just absolutely on fire when he's out there. Elite strength, knows how to use it. 455-pound bench, 550-pound squat. Like I said, is there a commitment for Jared Verse in the weight room? There 100% is. It translates into his numbers. He's got great flexibility. He's really a freakish athlete. Drew, this would be a great Detroit Lion. This would be a great Detroit Lion. And if he's somehow there at 29, or if they needed to, somehow he was on there at 25 and they were able to move up and grab him, this would be a great player to get. This is the type of edge they're looking to get.
That's a great point, Coach. Yeah, if he's there hanging around, if he slips past 20, yeah, and if you really like him, that's your guy. Yeah, Brad Holmes has gone up and get his guy. He's done that a few times, and we've seen it. So wouldn't surprise me at all, and I would endorse that 100% with Jared Verse. Very, very good football player. Coach, what do you see are possible concerns for Jared Verse, though?
Well, we've talked about this time and time again with defensive football players in our analysis. He can resort to over-aggression. He can get a little too over-aggressive, and far too often overruns plays and gets upfield. And that's something that he'll have to work out of his system. Probably when you play with that kind of torque on the edge, it's going to happen from time to time. You're just going to queue up too far upfield and not get to your arc spot, and that's or overrun your arc spot. And for him, that's something that he's going to have to work on. He's going to have to really commit and refine to be the type of edge defender. As a run defender, we need to see him be, because this is a 3-down type guy. This is not a DPR type. He's going to be expected to be able to play all 3 downs. He's got to be able to anchor in there, and he's done a very good job of that at the college level. That's just got to translate over to the NFL level, and it's easier said than done. He's got to refine his eye discipline and his play processes. Those are things that are gonna be challenged. They'll try to get him to bite hard inside on something just to run across his face. They're gonna try to get him to hang and run inside of him. They're gonna try to get him to go upfield. Those are the things that Jared Verse is going to be guilty of at times, and things he's going to have to refine. He's not the most disciplined tackler. Now, the photo we have of here is a kill shot on the Heisman Trophy winner. This is not necessarily an example of that, but he's a guy that's had some face masks and he's lost some tackles. Things have gotten away from him, trying to maybe get too big with the body and not enough security in some of his tackles. Going to have to refine that way as well. Gaudy college stats. University of Albany numbers are really, really, really juicy. Are those things that are going to translate to the NFL? If he puts up those numbers at the NFL level, he's going to have a gold jacket. But is he going to be able to produce at the NFL level with that kind of type of play? And can he play 3 downs in the NFL? Those are the things that if he's drafted in the top 15 and he ultimately is a pass rush specialist, well, then he'll be kind of one of these pass rush guys that bounces around the league. If he's a guy that can secure and play the run, he's going to play for one team for quite a while.
Yeah, and well said, Coach. And that's going to absolutely dictate where he's picked. If he's seen as a 3-down lineman, play 3 downs in the NFL, yeah, he's going to be coveted. I really like him a lot. I think he's going to be coveted regardless, because he's so talented and so dedicated. Like him a lot. And again, we talk about the level of competition some of these guys played in before they transferred to a bigger school or whatever. And we talk about we talk about that a lot. But as long, and even like, we talked about U of M's schedule last year, how really it wasn't the strongest schedule, at least until the last quarter of it. But the statistics were gaudy. So yeah, they didn't play maybe necessarily the elite competition, but they stomped on the competition that they played.
Right.
And Jared Verse put up big numbers against the competition he played. So yeah, like a lot to like there. Wouldn't cry one tear, maybe tear of joy or two if the Lions get them, because I'm be very happy with this pick. I think they would have to trade up to get him. To your point, I think that was a real good point you brought up, and I think that's how they would get him. But good football player here in Jared Verse. Here's a guy, the number 4 prospect. Let's talk about him from Penn State.
Demion Robinson, Drew, aka otherwise known as and affectionately known as Chop Robinson. He's our number 4 edge prospect. He's another 4-3 end defensive end type. This time out of Penn State University, 6'3", 254-pound junior. Demion comes from Gaithersburg, Maryland, right outside D.C. there. 4.48 speed. So we're talking about a guy that can really explode and get upfield very much like a Dallas Turner. Very much like a Dallas Turner on the stance. He was a 5-star recruit. Wow, he wound up at Maryland. He stayed at home and played for the Terps for the beginning of his career. And he was a freshman All-American at Maryland. So, I mean, Chop really got it going there. But he, transferred to Penn State, and all he did was, translate that into being an all Big Ten and all-American selection there as well. 20 career TFLs, 11.5 career sacks. Doesn't quite have the juice on the numbers like some of these other guys have, but 80-plus career pressures. 80-plus career pressures. They may have put a little bit more of a natural tendency towards protecting the coverage at Penn State more than they did on pinning the ears back and having guys create all sorts of pressure through stunts and blitzes, where you see guys hit home more on things in the area of sacks and tackles for loss. So that, and Penn State's played around with defensive coordinators during his time that he was there. So for him not to have, Jared Verse's numbers or Latu's numbers or Dallas Turner's numbers in regards to the tackles for loss and sacks, that's not a buyer beware necessarily. There are some different things there too. And he did move around and transfer a little bit, but he still generated 80-plus career pressures. This is a guy that has been an absolute menace as a pass rusher. An absolute menace as a pass rusher. Creates all sorts of problems. Makes the football leave the hand quick, which is not what offenses want to do. They want to dictate that, not have it dictated towards them. Demion Chop Robinson can dictate that on a quarterback.
You know it, and I completely agree, because he played in a Big Ten his whole career. And again, and it's a great point, Coach. The scheme, you got to look at the scheme too. What is that team really trying to accomplish on the defensive side of the football? Yeah, that absolutely can have an impact, and likely did here with Chop Robinson. But man, there is so much to like about this young man. Let's talk about some of the strengths you saw, Coach.
Well, he's supremely athletic. He's supremely athletic. I mean, just he's like Turner. He just absolute fluid, flexible, bursty athlete. Some of his, he can get off the ball. It's almost like it's inhuman. He can challenge 1.5 in his 10-yard split. It's amazing. And he's got boundless energy and torque and explosiveness out of his stance. He is so difficult to pass set on. So difficult to pass set on. He is gaining your edge like within an instant. He's got plenty of power and explosive frame. So I mean, yeah, it's not that he's unable to play the run. He's definitely physically able to do it as well. He's got exceptional flexibility and can bend and arc very, very well, which is really what he brings to the table, is his ability to translate that tremendous burst into arc and actual pass rush. It's very, very impressive, Drew. He leverages well with power and tenacity. He's tough to run across his face. He's good against the edge that way. But just an amazing athlete, Chop Robinson.
Yeah, great career, exceptional workout, especially the combine opened a lot of eyes. Chop Robinson, I think I know he was pretty much consensus top 10 prospect as a defensive end / edge rusher. I think he put himself in the top 5 on many people's list because of his workouts and what he can do athletically. And you articulated very well there, Coach. What can he work on to get better?
Some of it's going to be tough because he's not the longest natural edge. He's roughly 6'4". He leverages very, very well. It's something that he's done well at the college level. Is that going to translate though in the NFL level? Because he doesn't have the greatest natural length. He's going to have to refine his pass rush repertoire to beat the elite offensive tackles. Otherwise, he'll be neutralized because I think that's really what he is going to bring to the table, his ability to create a lot of problems against quarterbacks. He can mistime his movements and get blocked sometimes and kind of get washed out and picked up. So he can react late from time to time and correcting that. If he reacts late, well then, in the run game, that's not going to be great. If he reacts late in the pass game, well, he's going to be ineffective. So that's something that's going to have to continue to be refined. Basically refining as a player. He relies so often on that speed. And why wouldn't you? If you have that in your arsenal, I mean, that'd be something that you're obviously going to hang your hat on. But he can tend to rely on it maybe too heavily at times, which means he's just going to get washed out. There'll be times it's just picked up, or he's going to miss his arc spot and just really not be that effective. He's got to get better as a disciplined run defender. Gonna have to get better because this is a guy right now, probably day one as a DPR. He is a designated pass rusher. This is something we probably do see in the later first round. His ability is just that too nuanced. Is he a name being mentioned to the Detroit Lions? He is. He is somebody that it can afford to have a guy that just has one real element to his game that he's outstanding at now, and we can develop into a better run defender. We are probably a fit for that. We are probably somewhat of a fit for that. There are other organizations that are as well. Chop's likely to land on a pretty good football team and help as a pass rusher right away.
Yeah, Coach, I really have a hard time letting Chop Robinson pass by if he's there at 29. Really have a hard time with it. It's going to depend on obviously who else is there, but I mean, it better be at some key positions, for the Lions in particular, like a cornerback or a guard center or whatever, one of those things, because it's going to be really difficult to let Chop Robinson slide by. Just so much to like there, so athletically gifted. I think, yeah, to your point, maybe if he can refine that read and react game versus, because you're not going to be able to pin your ears back every snap. That's just not how it's going to work. And you don't want to be that one dimensional. And I think he's too athletically gifted to not be able to adjust, I think. So I think Chop Robinson is a very, very safe pick. I would love it if he became a Detroit Lion. I can't imagine him slipping out of the day one. I can't see it. It could happen, or anything can happen, but just don't see that being very likely, that being the case. Let's talk about a young man another one from Alabama here at number 5, Coach.
Our second member of the Crimson Tide, our number 5 edge prospect in the SPP big board is Chris Braswell. We're talking more of a 3-4 guy again, more of an outside backer edge type. Alabama, 6'3", 255-pound senior. A little thicker than Dallas Turner. Out of Baltimore, Maryland. He's a Baltimore native, and lo and behold, Coach Saban didn't get many of them during his time at Alabama, but he was a 5-star prospect, Drew. You never heard that affiliated with Alabama at all.
Yeah, very difficult.
He was an all-SEC pick during his time with the Crimson Tide, 16 career tackles for loss, 11 career sacks, 4 career forced fumbles, 92 career quarterback pressures. So this is a guy that has shown tremendous ability to create a quarterback pressure. So that is a statistic that I think gets glazed over too much from the defensive perspective. That is going to affect the pass game, and it's going to affect the points against the score, yards against the pass, and the effectiveness of the quarterback rating and his ability to actually pass the ball. It is a tremendous component to have for a defense is a guy that can create quarterback pressures. Chris Braswell did that very, very well in what was somewhat limited play time at Alabama. I mean, you don't just get to jump in there as a true freshman and play at Alabama oftentimes. There are guys that do, but most of the time, no, you got to wait your time out a little bit. But Chris Braswell has been a highly effective pass rusher at the college level.
I now, before we get to more of Chris Braswell's strengths here, Coach, I'll say this. If you cannot, as a team, at least make a quarterback uncomfortable, you're not going to win football games and you're not going to make the playoffs. You're just not. Now, sacks are great and you need them, but pressures and hurries and things like that, very, very critical. If you're not among in the upper half of the league in those categories, you're not making the playoffs more than likely, because that secondary, you better have a Sauce Gardner on each side of each corner. I mean, and most teams don't. So it's going to be real difficult if you can't get pressure on the quarterback. It's just so essential. But this young man does it very well. What else do you like about him?
He's another just very impressive athlete, high caliber athlete. He's got, just NFL caliber first step in pursuit speed, great effort player, another workout warrior. 705 squat, 705, 405 on the power clean. So this is a guy that can throw weight around and play with some power. He certainly can. Like we said, he's a phenomenal hustle and effort player. Plays with very violent physical hands. He's got a little bit more of the run edge setting capability than his partner Dallas Turner has. Just a little bit plays with that capability a little bit more and plays it better. He's willing to use the speed, the power, against much bigger offensive linemen, because he can press them. He can press the big boys and the guys that are really, really big and strong as pass setters. He's not afraid to engage those guys. A guy like a Dallas Turner may think twice about trying to speed the power him, like a guy like a Penny Sewell, just because, pretty tough to counter the strength that he's going to be able to press against you with. Yeah. Chris Braswell is going to bring it. He's going to try it. He's going to try it and probably have some effect at times. He plays with very sufficient power. He's shown some good awareness, and when they dropped him in zone, like I said, they're more of a 3-4 look. They're going to drop their edges a little bit more in Alabama, and he did so pretty well. And he was a willing special teams contributor throughout his career, which are going to be really, really big assets for Chris Braswell as he finds his fit and team in the NFL.
Yeah, this is a young man. He does a lot of things well. And when you to have that kind of strength, that's a key. I mean, and we talked about guys with good strength, but this is on almost another level here. So that's definitely a feather in his cap for Chris Braswell. What do you think he needs to work on, or what's maybe going to hold him back in this draft?
Well, he's a player that's very much needing development still, and that's no shade at the program that Coach Saban ran at Alabama. That's phenomenal. I mean, they're among the best coached players. That's why the league is full of Alabama players. But he played behind Will Anderson Jr. He was recruited. He was he's younger than him. He played behind him. That's not his fault necessarily. So he just wasn't out there as much. He didn't get as many reps. So he's got to refine a lot of things. Some of it's his hand usage. He's got great strength. He's going to transition into being more of a power player from the speed to power element at the edge. It's why he could transition into a 4-3 type, because he has that great strength. He's going to have to be able to refine his hands to be an NFL caliber pass rusher. He's not the most flexible, fluid athlete. So, I mean, honestly, he may have that conversion kind of coming his way where they're going to want to tack on another 15 or so, get him into the 270, 275 range. Can his power game translate to the NFL? I think it can. I mean, you don't squat 705 and power clean 405 and say that you can't play with power. But it may take him a little bit more developmental time than some of these other prospects for what's going to probably be done with Chris Braswell to make the player that Chris Braswell is going to be at the NFL level, which is going to be a run balanced, a balanced pass rush playing defensive end type prospect that's very, very good against the run. He can get out leveraged right now against superior blockers because he's playing this speed game quite a bit, but he's got to, still developing his processing and triggers, which are going to make him more effective against the run, and allow him to play more confidently once he gets good, some good repetitions with his triggers and gets more confident that way. But Chris Braswell is a guy that I would be intrigued with the Detroit Lions. He's a little bit of a prospect, but he has tremendous athletic components too. He's an intriguing one. He by fit isn't exactly to jump in and ready to give us a go, but Chris Braswell intrigues me. Very, very intriguing.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you, and that's why he's probably the first prospect we're talking about. It's maybe on the fringe of not being a day one guy, but if the right situation comes up, to your point, Coach, if he's able to show that he can play with that level of strength and he has the coordination to do it, that's what's going to be really critical. In the different situations he's going to encounter in the NFL. If he can put that coordination with the strength together, he's going to be a dominant player. So that's so enticing. And honestly, we haven't been able to say that too much, but a team like Detroit could take a chance on a guy like Chris Braswell, because you know what? To your point, he doesn't have to be the guy right now, but he's got to be a contributor, which he certainly would be. But he wouldn't even have to start necessarily this year. But man, he would eventually be the starter. You'd like to say he's going to take the baton from Mr. Davenport or whoever gets that job, right, and roll with it. So he's very much in play, but there's going to be a little. Now, I wouldn't call it buyer beware, but it's like his draft grade is going to get hurt in the sense that if he's not considered an every down player right off the hop, well, then that might make him a day two guy, because there'll be other positions of need for teams that have to address them, and it could push him out of the first round. But he's got first round talent, Coach. I think that's the consensus here.
Yeah, and it's what's probably going to have to be done with him is they're going to probably need to kind of metamorphosize him into more of a 4-3 defensive end type. It's probably what his athletic profile befits a little bit more. And that could take a little bit of time. But again, in the right spot, there's plenty of time to do that. And he could be very, very good.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing where he ends up. Let's talk about our number 6 prospect, Coach, out of the University of Washington.
Our last, of the top 6, another guy that's probably on the fence of that day one, but this is a guy that I really like as a potential Detroit Lion. Our number 6 edge prospect is out of the University of Washington. He's a defensive end edge named Braylon Trice, 6'4", 274. So this is a guy that's got the NFL build already. Junior out of Phoenix. He's a team captain for the Huskies. He's a 2-time All-American, 2-time All-Pac-12 selection. He was the 2022 Team Defensive Most Valuable Player. So highly productive in his time with the Huskies. 101 career tackles, 28 and a half career tackles for loss, 18 career sacks. Get this number. That's not a misprint. 137 career quarterback pressures. 137 career quarterback pressures. This is a guy that is a speed to power nemesis and plays with great strength and functional fluidity to be able to press and encroach upon a quarterback. This is a guy that makes your defense better that way. He's a quiet contributor to a good defense. And this is a guy that could be spooky good for the Detroit Lions at that number 29 pick. I like Braylon Trice a lot. I've hemmed and hawed. And there's other players I'd like to see, and I'd like to see him better at 61. But this is a guy here, Drew. This is a guy.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about him. Running draft models now, because we're getting closer to the actual draft on the 25th of April here in Detroit, and running models, he's kind of all over. Sometimes I see him going late in day one. Sometimes I see him going early day 2 in round 2. But but there's so much to like about him. I think he's a very safe pick. What else do you like about him?
Well, what I like about him is, the Lions are about making you one-dimensional and shutting the run completely down. And that fits his forte. We talked about a lot of great pass rushers so far, and guys that are very nuanced at rushing the passer. This is one that's phenomenal at stuffing the run. Outstanding block destructor. Sets the most responsible edge in this draft when it comes to run. When it comes to running the football. Phenomenal run anchor for a defensive end. He's got great size. He's 6'4", 275 today. I mean, that's great. I mean, this is a guy that could flex up into the 290 range, which is kind of freakish and weird for a defensive end. He was extremely strong at the point of attack, very effective at pressing and releasing and beating blocks that way. He can engage offensive linemen and actually shed and replace them, which a lot of these guys are just kind of these bursty, blazing fast players that really can get knocked off of their edge. This is a guy that sets the edge for himself, is Braylon Trice. He's a very frantic, stressful pass rusher. When he triggers on pass, he's very, very, very kind of almost like a stressful pass rusher, thus creating all of those hurries. He really works towards, affecting the quarterback very, very quickly. It's excellent at enforcing his speed to power on strong offensive tackles. This is a guy that's going to tell, Peninsula, I'll bang with you. I'll bang with you. I'll bang with you all day. Maybe you're better than me. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to bang with you. You're going to feel me. You're going to feel me. And as you get a little older, Penny, I'm going to take you over. And that's the kind of mentality that Braylon Trice will play with out there. He's kind of like a bully, kind of, physical, tough mentality that you want. Your old school defensive end. So he flashes some impressive agility and quickness. He's able to be effective still as a pass rusher, whether or not he's hitting home all that much or not. That's okay. We've got another guy on the other side that can hit home. But yes, I am a fan of Braylon Trice because of what he brings to the table as a run defender, first and foremost.
Yeah, and he does walk a fine line, Coach. You brought up he's a how he can really press and especially when he recognizes the passing situation. You certainly want that urgency. But there's some concerns on the other side though of that too, right, Coach? That can go the other way for you, can it?
Oh, big time. And I think it happened in the national championship game once against him. He can panic and use real poor hand technique. And when he does that, his hands will get grabby, clutchy, up towards the face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you get the illegal hands, and that's when you can latch on too long and be ineffective too. He can get a little frantic with his hands. He sometimes is over willing to destruct and disrupt, which is going to lead to maybe some unnecessary roughness, some of those kinds of things. He's not a mental case per se, but he's so wanting to disrupt and do those kinds of things that maybe he commits to it so much that he's not much of a playmaker. That's not that we weren't saying it so much from a standpoint of being a penalty machine. It's a guy that is willing to disrupt and destroy a block over making a play. There's going to be times we need him to make a play. And will he be able to generate that? He's kind of limited in his pass rush repertoire at this point in time. He's a speed to power guy. And you know what? There are some guys, that's what they do. That's all they bring to the table. And that's okay. But right now, that's all he is. And he's going to need to refine his pass rush repertoire to a little bit. We talked about a lot of guys that have a lot of sophistication and complex pass rush repertoires. Braylon's more of a speed to power guy only. Kind of an inconsistent tackler. This is a guy that is making plays by destroying blocks and disrupting passers more than he is making tackles and big plays behind the line of scrimmage. So, when asked to make plays, Braylon Trice is a little bit average. And I think that's why we're seeing his draft stock, because he is so good against the run, a little bit lower. Is that, he just doesn't make a ton of plays. as compared to some other edge prospects.
Sure.
He's not overly twitchy and explosive. He's not going to beat you with his feet. He's going to beat you with his hands and his physical stature. He can be a little bit stiff in his movements at times, and he misses in the open field. But we're not going to ask him to be in the open field too often. This is more of an inline edge guy. Athletically speaking, are we talking about the most athletic edge? No. Out of the guys we've talked about thus far, this is the least athletic edge. But this is the strongest from a standpoint of being able to defend the run as a football player. I'm not going to put up his numbers against Braswell or some of these other guys, Jared Verse, that are freaks in the weight room. I am guessing Braylon Trice is pretty impressive in that area too.
Sure.
But this is a guy that's a tremendous run-stopping defensive end, Drew.
Yeah, and he's in that tweener group. When I say that, for the Lions' perspective, is he a candidate at 29? Long shot, possibly, but a long shot. Will he be there in round 2 when you're picking at 61? Probably not. I don't think so.
I avoid there.
Yeah, so it's going to be a situation, at least from the Detroit perspective, if they like someone better at 29, but they really like Trice, which I can't imagine they don't like him, they would have to move up probably in round 2 to make that happen. Time will tell. Yeah, or trade back out of 29 exactly and get some capital. Which, hey, you know what? The more picks Brad Holmes has, the better off the Detroit Lions are, and that's a fact. That's a fact. So. Not opposed to that at all. Braylon Trice would be a very good fit in Detroit, be a very good fit in the NFL for any team pretty much. But like you said, you point out some good things. There's some things he needs to work on. Yeah, anytime you get to a point where you're like hair on fire, well, you gotta have your wits about you too, and you can get neutralized quick. Obviously, it doesn't happen to him often because he seems to be very effective when he gets there, because with all those hurries, that's an incredible number. But at the same time, it's not going to be not that it was easy in college. It's certainly not going to be easy in the NFL. So he's going to have to figure that out. But there's a lot to like about Braylon Trice. So good job on him, Coach. So am I leading this off, Coach, the dark horses?
You are.
Okay. Well, no problem. Let's go to KZoo. Let's go to Western Michigan University. Let's talk about Marshawn Nealand, the edge defensive end. He's a 6'3", 275-pound junior. He's a native of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Would we really like that 4.18 pro shuttle time? That's outstanding.
That's running back quick.
Yes, exactly. An all MAC player, 149 career tackles, 28 career tackles for loss, 13 career sacks, 3 career forced fumbles, and 80-plus career quarterback pressures. This guy gets after it. There's so much to like about him. He's got an NFL-ready build and physical profile. He's shown that. It's on tape. The measurables are there, 6'3", 275. That's ideal size, what you look for in a defensive end. He's alignment versatile, so he can go inside. That's good. He can. We've seen him stand up a little bit, Coach. Not a whole lot, but he can do that. But he's a high hand and hard charging motor. I mean, he just from the snap to the whistle, the guy is working. Amazing work ethic and effort. He's confident. He's determined. He's a willing block destroyer. So, like Coach said, that doesn't get on the stat sheet. So that's an unselfish thing to do for a player, quite frankly. When you got the ability to get the sack and make the glamorous play, to be able to be a block destructor and allow one of your teammates to pick it up, that's a kind of guy you want on your team. Skilled in speed to power rush technique. Again, your coach has talked about that a lot already with the top 6. This guy has it too. Violent, explosive first step, very important, especially at any level, but especially in the NFL, you got to have that. He's a high impact in the run game too, and he's a consistent pressure generator. So again, the motor's always going. He doesn't take plays off. He's versatile. He can do a lot of good things here. So what does he need to work on, or what are some of the question marks? Well, he's not the most fluid athlete. He's a very good athlete, but he's not super fluid, not super smooth. He doesn't possess the arc or bend of some of the other edge rushers, so a little stiffer, a little more upright. Not a top end athlete, needs to refine hand consistency. That's going to be very critical. That, number one, are you coachable and instinctive? He seems to be, Marshawn Nealand, by all accounts, is very coachable. his instincts and how he's able to pick up on being able to leverage things with his hands better, leverage his opponent in front of him with his hands better. It's going to be critical for him. He's got to become a better tackler. And will he struggle to find anchor in the NFL? So it all ties in there with technique. What kind of changes is he going to have to make? Now, when I looked up, when I done a lot of research on Nealon, watched some film, reading some scouting reports, it came up again, but they said he dominated his competition, and he emphatically dominated his competition last year on tape. So there's just so much to like about Nealon, Coach. I really would like him as a Lion on day 2 if it's possible. What are your thoughts?
Very, very similar player profile to Braylon Trice. Very, very similar. A very, very similar style. These guys are very, very much like each other. Another Lou Esposito prospect. We talk about Braden Fisk, who, of Florida State, but let's face it, Braden Fisk was really a Western Michigan Bronco for 5 years.
Yeah.
Marshawn Elam just decided to stay, in Kalamazoo. So they played for a guy that's now the University of Michigan defensive line coach, who had left to become the co-defensive coordinator, D-line coach at Memphis. So, a guy that was very, very successful and producing some really, really good players, at Western. He's got a lot of the same similar characteristics like Braylon Trice, as we mentioned. So the one thing that he hasn't, it's been done at the MAC level, not at the Pac-12 level or the national Power 5 level. So, I mean, some of his things, is he going to be able to translate? Is the curve too much for him to be able to climb and become a near every down type defensive end? That's what we're concerned about. Is he there at 61? Do I see or 72? The two, kind of picks that are real close for the Lions. Do I see the Lions looking at maybe, looking at a Marshawn Elam in that area on day 2? Yeah, if he's there, I think there's a lot of intrigue there because he's been very well coached, and we have seen guys from the Mid-American Conference really, really rise to, and especially, out of this pay, Joel Smengi, Jason Babin, to name a couple of guys. We've had some defensive end types out of Western do really, really well.
Yeah, a lot to like there. And I agree with, I've seen a lot of draft models where he's there pretty frequently at 72. So if you can wait it out and you land a guy like Nealon at 72, yeah, life's good. That's no question. Okay, Coach, who you got next?
Well, we're going to talk about the second of our 2 Penn State edge defenders. A lot of tandem guys here from Colorado. Like I said, we have 3 out of UCLA. We're going to talk about 2 of them. I'm going to talk about 2 of them from Alabama. We're going to talk about 2 from Penn State. This one's Adisa Isaac, 6'4", 249-pound defensive end edge out of Penn State. He was a senior from Brooklyn, New York, 4-star prospect, 10.3 broad jump. So he really's got some good burst and torque in his legs. All Big Ten selection, 92 career tackles, 31.5 career tackles for loss, 14.5 career sacks, 80-plus career pressures. So this is a guy that was an absolute pain in the butt for a lot of offensive coordinators, a lot of quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Very sturdy, committed run defender. Where we talked about, Demian being more of the guy that really kind of, likes to fly upfield and be real bursty and surgy as a pass rusher. So does Adisa, but Adisa is a little bit more committed and refined to his run triggers. So it's a very responsible edge, which this is intriguing. This is real intriguing that way. He's alignment versatile. He's very active with his hands, using his pass rush. Again, this is a guy that plays with a similar player profile, probably to Marshawn Leland, and very similar to that of Braylon Trice as well. But probably, has a little bit more of the physical elements of more like his partner, Chop Robinson. Very competitive player, very competitive guy, plays every down. He's very successful stunting and slanting, which is big, especially as a sub-package player. He's like, I could probably insert right away and do those kinds of things real quickly. He tore his Achilles tendon in 2021. So that is a thing that That's an injury people don't like to see. That really can affect your burst. It can affect, and it's something that can be, I guess, ability changing. And I wonder if some NFL GMs are going to be concerned about that. He's got to get stronger. If he's going to play with his type of player profile at the NFL level, he's got to get stronger. He's going to get displaced by the superior blockers, the Taylor Deckers, the Penisulas, the Zeitlers. These are the guys that are going to, redirect you. And we would need to see him get stronger in that area, without a doubt. He can be a little bit stiff and late off the snap as he wears down. So, there's some of the ability here isn't quite the same as it is with some of the other guys. Can he physically hold up in the NFL? Will that, his injury be something that is going to disallow him to be ultimately as successful as he could be at the NFL? Time will tell. He brings an awful lot to the table. He is a very, very disruptive pass rusher and guy that gets into the backfield, yet sets a very disciplined edge and plays with great run responsibility. This is a fine football player, Drew. Can he withstand his injury that he had in 2021? And can he get bigger and stronger and hold up at the NFL level? Those are the questions that are still out there on Adisa Isaac.
Yeah, and great job on him, Coach. I like Isaac a lot. The injuries concern me, but the timing makes me feel a little better because that's 2021. We're in 2024. He's been playing and he's looked good. So again, it's like you said, it's a delicate injury, but we're seeing more and more guys recover from it fully, which is good. And I think his youth helps him in that regard because we've seen guys. We saw Romeo Cora have it happen in his late 20s, right? And then ultimately it's probably what ended up having him have to walk away. It's just it doesn't
try it one more year and then
it just doesn't allow you to do what you you need to do and want to do. But at the same time, I see a lot of James Houston ability type here in terms of with Isaac, because in terms of his size and what might be able to do off the line, but I see potential. He could potentially become a Cliff Averill type guy because Cliff Averill ultimately ended up weighing 275 pounds. I don't believe he weighed that coming out. And I know he didn't because I was in my youth. I was very concerned. Like, why are you drafting a defensive end who's 235, 240 pounds? That's not going to work. The old school, right? But Cliff Averill made it happen. And he was a 3rd-round pick out of Purdue. Adisa Isaac, I see a lot. I see similar traits, similar body structure. So can he do it? Yeah, he absolutely could. But I think the floor for him though is a pretty solid rotational guy, like you said, and also somebody who's going to be a sneaky good pass rusher, especially when you can run slants and misdirections out there. It's just you're very versatile in that regard, and his quickness is going to help him. He does need to get stronger though, no question. Where do you see him kind of falling, Coach? I kind of see him around round 3.
Yeah, I think around round 3 is very fair. There's going to be a run at defensive ends at times in day 1, and in I wonder if there's one in day 2. It could move him into the 2nd round. But I'm thinking more of a round 3, day 2 selection for Adisa Isaac.
Yeah, very good football player though. Going to be fun to see where he ends up. I got to talk about Jonah Ellis. You mentioned him at the beginning, Coach. This Jonah Ellis from the University of Utah, 6'2", 248-pound junior. Of course, his father, Luther Ellis, former Ute at Utah, and also former defensive tackle for the Detroit Lions in number 94 or 93 in Detroit, or 94 in Detroit. That's what he wore in Detroit, right? So from Moscow, Idaho, again, son of Lion Luther Ellis, All-American, 2-time All-Pac-12. He has 23 career tackles for loss, 16 career sacks, 4 career fumble recoveries, and 77 career quarterback pressures. That's a nice number for a junior there. That's good. And again, he's not huge. He's 6'2", 248, but definitely has the ability to get to the quarterback. So what are his strengths? Well, he's got that NFL pedigree. We can tell you that right now. And Dad was a pretty fine defensive lineman, an underrated pass rusher in my view, Coach. Luther Ellis was a very good football player next to Robert Porcher for a long time in the 90s with the Lions. Jonah Ellis, certainly you like Marvin Harrison Jr. We hope the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and you're going to get that kind of guy out of Jonah. Smart, disciplined player. He has an explosive first step, and he gets going real fast. So that's very important, especially when you're a little undersized. You got to make up for that, and he does. He has an outstanding football IQ, and it probably ties into that pedigree too. He's been getting good coaching probably as long as he can remember. He's quick and decisive, and has consistent hands. So that's a positive too. So he doesn't get caught up in the moment or the emotion of it. The hands are consistent. So he has a well-developed pass rush repertoire, which again, this shows you a football player that knows what his strengths are and where he needs to be and what he needs to either compensate for or work on. And that be able to have that pass rush repertoire shows you that he understands, I'm not going to blow through guys. I got to figure out how to get around them or underneath them. And he does a good job at that. He has good closing speed. He's a good tackler, and he's got high energy and a relentless motor. And that almost needs to be a given anymore, but it's not. And not a lot of guys can play at a high level for a long time, but they wear down. Jonah Ellis has a very high motor, so he's got a lot going for him here. What does he need to work on, or what are some things holding him back a little bit? So length and strength are issues. Again, he's done a fine job of compensating for any issues regarding his size or his size or speed or whatever. But at the same time, that's all got to improve at the next level. And so the question becomes, will it? Size fears are a restriction. So again, there it is. We're not going to tack 3 inches of height on Jonah Ellis. So can he pack on another 20 pounds and still maintain his level of speed and not sacrifice any technique? Those are the questions. He's a modest run defender. He's got to gain mass and get stronger. Like I just said, he's got to put on probably about 20 pounds. He's average. His flexibility is average, and probably not the most dynamic moving skills overall. But overall, Coach, there's a lot to like about Jonah Ellis, and I think to be a late day 2, early day 3 guy, I think Jonah Ellis will make a fine pick for any team, especially our Lions.
Absolutely. And I see a DPR. That's kind of what I see at the next level, just looking at his size. There's things he can do about 248, not too much that he can do about 6'2". That's a little short. But he's very nuanced as a pass rusher. He's that part of his game is extremely well developed. It's a great skill of his. And he possesses really good closing speed, which means he can blitz and do some different things if they moved him around the alignment a little bit. That and being modest run defender, I see kind of a trick pony here. He's a sub-package pass rush specialist only. Where you thought he's going to be slotted in the draft is exactly probably in that general area is where you would see those type of players coming off of the board. And I think he's going to have some success with it. He's definitely a tough, rugged kid, played for a tough, rugged program at the University of Utah. Luther was a tough, rugged player. So, a lot to like in that regard. Wish the best to him because I think he's going to be a guy that gets to be a bit of a DPR here for a while.
Well, Luther's got 12 kids, including Jonah, I think. So he probably basically he gets some good, maybe some 7-on-7 action going on, even at a young age. Probably be able to play some football. So good luck to him. Let's talk about your next guy, Coach, and this is from where I'm at here in Canton, Michigan.
We're talking about Mr. Darius Robinson. We talked about Demion Robinson, Chop Robinson out of Penn State. This is Darius Robinson, an edge defensive end, a defensive lineman type prospect. This is a guy that can play down as a defensive tackle as well. From the University of Missouri, 6'5", 296. So, yes, he is an edge that has massive, massive size. He's lives in Southfield, Michigan now. Played his high school football at Canton High School, where he was a 3-star prospect. So he's a local product. 35-inch vertical leap. So this is a guy that can get long, can get off the ground, does have some torque in that big, long frame. He's an all-SEC selection. He's aligned in every single spot along the defensive front in his career with great amount of reps. So he has played, I would say, near 100 at nose. He's played well over 100 snaps at defensive tackle in different alignments. He's played well over 100 snaps as a defensive end in different alignments. This is an extremely experienced football player that has a very, very high level repertoire of alignment responsibility understanding. That has a lot of weight to it. This kid has played it all and can play it all. 111 career tackles, 21 career tackles for loss, 13 career sacks, 60 plus career quarterback pressures. So yeah, is he a bit of a stuffer? Is he a bit of a run guy first? Probably. But he does it very, very well. He's got a massive build. Played primarily defensive tackle at Missouri. He's got extremely powerful anchor there, and he could become just a defensive tackle in the NFL as well. He could. He's very difficult at the point of attack because of his leverage and his strength. He's agile and able, and that's why we're thinking, yes, he can stick and hang and bang as a pass rusher too and be an edge guy because he is very agile and he's a pretty fluid, dynamic movement skill guy. He's got great long arms. He's a good leverage player on the edge. Does not get beat, on perimeter run very much at all. Tremendous versatility in his alignment and position capability, and he's an outstanding run defender. So this is a guy that, the Lions have been linked to a little bit. He is another guy that would really help them make somebody one-dimensional. Is he going to add a lot of eye pop in the pass rush game? Probably not. And those speak to some of his limits. In the speed rush, he does not have a lot of speed. He's not going to speed rush really anybody. So he's not going to arc and bend like Chop Robinson's going to, like Dallas Turner's going to, like Latu is going to. He's not going to do those things. That's not his type of play. He really relies on his strength and his power. He's not extremely explosive. He's got to refine his eye discipline and his triggers just to give him head starts. So he's got the greatest get up and go he possibly can get because he kind of needs it. Moves a little stiffer than some of the other edge guys, but he's 6'5", 296. He's not 6'4", 240. He's a bigger bodied frame. So is that a limitation? Yes, as an edge defender, I can see where people would say that it is. Is it ultimately a limitation? No. He's got a lot of strengths that offset that. He's primarily a bull rusher. He's a power pass rusher, which is, he's going to engage and push pocket. Is he a guy that winds up on the inside? He probably ultimately, yes, he does as a defensive tackle. Is he a player, at least early on, can give you a little bit of work at both and be an outstanding run setting edge defender and a guy that can push a little bit and anchor? He could be. I can see other prospects being maybe a little bit snazzier for the Lions, but Darius Robinson brings a lot of intrigue because he is a homegrown product. He is a Lions fan at heart, and the amount of versatility that he brings as a defensive lineman, let alone just as an edge player, is pretty impressive. Ultimately, he probably becomes a defensive tackle throughout the end of his rookie deal into his second contract. But this is a guy that's really intriguing because of his versatility.
Yeah, it would be something else to have your on one edge you got the Plymouth, Michigan native, on the other you got the Canton, Michigan native.
Isn't that wild?
That is crazy, and both high level, high skilled players. I agree with your assessment of Robinson, Coach. I like him a lot. Here's where, and I early on we saw mock drafts having him at Detroit in 29. Not seeing him as much anymore. Could it happen still? Yeah. But I don't think so. But the problem is I also don't see him being there when they pick is at 61 in round 2. I don't see it. And because he's not the prototypical edge rusher, like you said. He's more of a, he's going to be more disciplined against the run, and he's bigger. That's not a bad thing. Being versatile, that's a good thing. Ultimately moving inside, well, that's not a bad thing either, because, even though right now the Lions have Reeder and McNeil, Reeder's probably not going to be there after the contract, so you probably need to move him inside, and that wouldn't be a bad thing. The concern here is if you like him that much, do you think he's going to be there at 61? I don't know. He's been tough to gauge in that regard, Coach, because he's a tweener in a sense. Even he's a defensive lineman. There's no question about that. But is he an edge? Is he a tackle? If you're looking for a pass rush specialist, that's not your guy. But at the same time, if you've got a pass rusher like a Hutchinson at the other edge, and now you've beefed up your middle, the Lions in this scenario could definitely go with a Darius Robinson at the other edge. Obviously Davenport's there too, but at the same time, you can afford to get a guy like that and cultivate him, because eventually he's going to have to step up and start. But really like him a lot, though. Lot to like about him, Coach. So let's go to the next guy, our next dark horse candidate here. And I'm intrigued by this young man, Javon Solomon out of Troy, the edge rusher / outside linebacker, similar in size to Jonah Ellis, 6'2", 249, the junior out of Tallahassee, Florida, an All-American last year, 4-time All-Sun Belt player. You like to see that. Sun Belt Conference single-season sack leader, which is impressive. 183 career tackles, 49.5 career tackles for loss, 33 career sacks, 16 sacks last year. There's that record we talked about. 5 forced fumbles and 4 fumble recoveries in his career. And then here another eye popper, 125 plus career quarterback pressures. This guy gets after it, and he's got speed to burn. So what else do we like about him? Well, he's an NFL caliber athlete. And he demonstrated that. And again, playing at Troy in the Sun Belt, much like Western Michigan, the MAC, a mid-major, conference, but he dominated. And that's what you want to see. He's a lineman and position versatile. Again, he can put his hand in the dirt. He can be in a 2-point stance. He can drop back in coverage and also hold the run. So we like that about him. He has great acceleration and explosion. He's a massive backfield disruptor. You don't have 125 plus career quarterback pressure without getting back there. So definitely very athletic and intelligent player, extremely productive on passing downs. He plays with exceptional leverage, and he has a strong pass rush repertoire. So again, we've got a guy who understands I'm not 300 pounds, but I got to get through the guy in front of me. The tackle is 320. You got to figure it out. And Javon Solomon's been able to do that. So what does he need to work on, or what are some things that are going to maybe hurt him in the NFL? He's undersized as an edge prospect. He just is. So there's very little chance that Javon Solomon ends up. I shouldn't say very little, but he's going to have to put on probably 20 pounds, Coach, and be able to keep his hand in the dirt most of the time in the NFL. If he can do that, he's got the ability. If he can maintain that same level of speed, and if he can improve his strength, that's going to be a good thing. Designated pass rusher. Well, I think initially that's what he's going to have to be. There's no question about that. But again, that's not a bad thing. Because if he can, even if that's his floor, if he does it very well, a la James Houston type guy, you're going to have a long career in the NFL. That's a good thing. He does struggle with leverage on the perimeter. Again, when you weigh 250, you're going against guys that are 320, 330. That's going to be a concern, and probably one he's not going to straight up overcome by just putting 20 pounds on. He can get overwhelmed in power schemes. So again, he's going to be scheme specific, down specific, and that's where it can tie into maybe he's just a pass rush specialist. He's got to improve against the run. Again, that's the only way you stay on the field for downs that aren't obvious passing downs, right, Coach? You got to be able to play the run, and I think to be a Detroit Lion, that's no question. You have to be able to do that. But I love his athletic profile. I like that he dominated the Suncoast. I think he's going to be a day 3 pick, but I really think that if he can realize some of these things we're talking about, he could become a very, very good NFL football player and one of those late round, like day 3 gems we talk about that could really, really surprise people. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he is somebody that I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know this, but because I don't get a chance to talk to them, but that there are probably a handful of defensive or scouts or GMs or draft planners out there that do see him, like you say, kind of as transitioning into this every down, outside backer, defensive end type player, he's going to have to get a little bit bigger so he can defend the run better. And there are going to be some that sees him for what he is, and so they're not going to really ever want that from him, and they're going to use him as a DPR. The latter, that's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, his 49 and a half career tackles for loss, 50 career tackles for loss. That's amazing. And 33 career sacks. We were coveting guys that had prolific careers with 33 tackles for loss. So, I mean, this is he's amazing success rate at the Sun Belt Conference. Amazing success rate there. So he's very, very disruptive. I'd say keep him disruptive. Keep him disruptive. Really maximize his athletic ability, and you've got yourself one heck of a DPR in Javon Solomon. I agree, Drew. Very, very intriguing prospect.
All right, Coach. Here's our last prospect out of the University of California at Los Angeles. Again, let's talk about him.
Another UCLA prospect. This guy's got a twin brother that plays too. That's probably going to at least be a UDFA. Gabriel Murphy, edge defensive end, defensive lineman prospect out of UCLA, 6'3", 260-pound junior from Dallas, Texas. Like we said, twin brother Grayson, also an edge prospect out of UCLA. Gabriel came from North Texas. He came from the Mean Green of the University of North Texas. He was an all-conference USA selection there, and it was an all-conference selection at UCLA as well. 147 career tackles between the two schools, 37 and a half career tackles for loss, 21 career sacks, 100-plus career quarterback pressures. Again, mainly coming out of Conference UCLA at North Texas. Great first step. You can look at his build and see that he's a lean, torquey type build. He's got great first step. He can really disengage from a blocker well and keep separated. Outstanding athlete. He's got blazing fast hand usage. Really, really uses his hands that way really, really well. Extremely technical player. Good to see. Relentless hot running motor. Another guy that plays really torqued up, high octane guy. He's alignment and position vertical. He can actually get himself down in there and burrow in and play some defensive tackle. He's got a very well developed pass rush repertoire. Got to play a lot of football early at North Texas. Gabriel Murphy got to play a lot of football at North Texas, which really aided in his ability to become a more nuanced player. He is undersized. He's not at 6'3", 260. He's not what you're thinking of as a defensive tackle that would play on an every down basis. 6'3", 260 and an edge at 6'3". He is definitely not going to be one of the taller guys there. So, yes, there are some size concerns. He's going to have to refine his hands. He's got good hands. He uses them well in the pass rush, but he's got to refine his hand usage if he's going to have any success at the NFL level. That technique must get stronger just because he's going to have to be able to use those and being able to be solvent out there. He's not the most physical run defender in the world, as you could probably look at him and see. Here he is getting ready to go against Troy Fatano right there. Trying to kind of, cross his face there. And that probably is going to make Gabriel Murphy also a DPR. He's got below average block destruction. That's very much a work in progress. Honestly, this is a DPR. People are going to see Gabriel Murphy, and they're going to see a DPR, designated pass rusher. And that's okay. I think he goes in that area, probably day three, somewhere in 4th, 5th round, maybe even 6th round, just because people are going to kind of see his roles. Not that he didn't produce. It's not that he's not a fine athlete. All of those boxes are checked. But the NFL, what's his role look like it's going to be? Probably as a designated pass rusher.
Yeah, and you're right. You could be, if you're a designated pass rusher and you're an outstanding pass rusher, you are likely a day 2 or day 3 guy, because you're not going to give day 1 money to somebody that's not going to be on the field every snap potentially. It just doesn't happen. So, there's exceptions, of course, but for the most part, it's not what you're looking to do. You can get that kind of value on day 2 and day 3. That's why we love it. We got a GM like Brad Holmes, because he's adept at identifying this kind of talent. So would Gabriel Murphy fit in Detroit? Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. Where would that be? Well, it's going to depend on what position groups got addressed in day one and day two. And that's going to dictate what happens. I think straight up talent wise, I would be surprised if he slipped past the fourth round, but by the time you get to day three, now you've got teams that are looking to backfill other positions because they had a need that they weren't able to address, or they got enamored with another guy and maybe they want to take a flyer on a running back or a receiver that they weren't able to take in day one or two. And that's why a guy like Gabriel Murphy slips backwards. It's not a knock on him per se, because all things being equal, like I said, I can't imagine he'd be drafted after round 4, but these are the things that happen. So very interesting skill set for him and a lot of the guys we talked about, and we'll see how it turns out. Coach, we want to wrap this one up here real quick, and we'll get to the right camera angle here. Oh, there we go. Okay, now who's the producer here? My God. Okay. Final thoughts on this draft. With the edge rusher position before we sign off.
A lot of players to like. I think we may have talked about a Detroit Lion. I think I do. I do think we talked about a Detroit Lion out of this position group. To me, who do I like the best? I mean, I do like elements to all of them. Yeah. Of course I like Dallas Turner. We're not going to get to him. I really, really like Jared Verse. I think that would be probably as good of a draft pick as we can make. Just don't see that happening at 29. That we would probably have to look at maybe trading up in regards to acquiring him. Chop Robinson is intriguing. Is a guy that's really going to be able to rush the passer. I really like Braylon Trice. I could really see him being a long-term fit here and a big answer as well as a guy that could be there where Jared Verse may not be. Guys like Marshawn Nealon intrigue me. I'm very much impressed by that. And when you talk about a Javon Solomon and some of those things that he can bring to the table in regards to being a DPR and his ability to rush the passer, that's intriguing as well. So, I mean, I do think that we are talking about a position group that the Detroit Lions are going to address. And I think at the top end, we see there's just the athleticism is just getting more and more impressive every year.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, but it's just been an evolution of sports, and every sport has it. It's more pronounced in football because it's the size of a lineman on either side of the ball is the strength and size you need and conditioning you need is just unbelievable. And the old that's to me that's one of the toughest. The old line's one of the toughest positions to play, just because of how much. Not only do you have to be physically strong and gifted, and have endurance, but you have to know every play. You have to know most everyone's responsibility. It's incredible. It's a ballet in essence. Everything's timing. Everything's when you're pulling. When we talk about that, it's all timing. So as a defensive end, you've got to be so savvy to be able to counter a lot of the techniques you're going to encounter from an offensive line, but you've got to be strong and quick too. And those old linemen don't come off the field typically. Typically your starting five, that's who you're going to roll with. If someone comes off, it's because of an injury or something like that. They typically don't go off the field. So you got to be a special type of athlete to be an edge rusher, no question, because you're not going to be a 300-pounder. You can't be. You're not going to be effective that way.
Unless you're Darius Robinson.
In which case, like I said, I like him a lot. I don't like him at 29, Coach. No. I don't. But round 2, I very much like him. But again, I don't know if he'll be there at 61. So we shall see. Folks, we're going to be putting this in our 2024 positional preview playlist. So check that out. Like Coach said, subscribe to the channel. Give us your comments. We love hearing it. We've gotten some comments lately, some good stuff. So keep it up, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you for watching. The draft, April 25th, is right around the corner. We've got 2 groups to cover, and then our mock draft for the first round before we jump into the actual draft. So thank you for your support, and thanks for watching. For Coach Andy Shield of the Marine City Mariners, I am Drew. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.